Philly's favorite 100.7 FM and 99.5 HD3. Good morning, everybody. It's Chris here. We're getting started with Real Talk with the real estate diva, Desiree McDuffie. Today we have a special guest talking about a variety of topics, including tangled titles, conservatorships, and wholesaling. So stay tuned as we get started. Real Talk with the real estate diva. Let's go.
Desiree, Real Estate Diva here with another episode of Real Talk with the Real Estate Diva. Today, we are blessed to have Mr. Jeffery Young. He is a powerful attorney with the Legis Group LLC. He's a young Black attorney, very gifted. I can say that I personally can vouch for him because he's helped me in a legal situation. So I'm really excited to have him here with us. So thank you for coming in, Jeffery. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you, Desiree, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
To speak with your listeners.
Thank you. Thank you. So, let's just jump right into it. I already said you're a powerful young Black attorney. You've been doing your thing. You helped me with my process. So tell us a little bit about your background.
So I'm, born and raised in Philly. As a kid, I always wanted to be an attorney. I actually wanted to be the district attorney, right? Because they locked up bad guys, right? I'm like, well, what's that? I'm like, oh, well, they're lawyers. So I'm like, okay, I had to do some research on what an actual lawyer is. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I realized that, in this city, and most cities across the country, the district attorney is elected. So I started, getting more into politics and figuring out, what is politics and what does that look like? Okay. And that kind of guided me on the trajectory that, that I've been on since. I went to college graduated college at Temple University with a degree in political science. And from there, it's like, okay, I'm going to be an attorney. So I went to law school at Rutgers in Newark, New Jersey, where it's called the People's Electric Law School. People don't. So I went there for a reason because it had a history of just civil rights activism, and just having other students that look like me there, from a PWI, from a predominantly white institution. So it was a great feel. I loved every bit of it, and I loved the type of training and legal training I received at that school. From law school, I then went to work for City Council President Darrell Clark. Okay. I worked in his office for about 6.5 years as his legislative counsel, where I worked on things from, drafting the zoning legislation, to constituent services, to, special projects, particularly most development projects that happen in the 5th Council District. So anywhere from Center City up to Broad and Erie. If something was being built,
it's a large district.
It's a very large district. If anything was being built, I kind of had my hands in on it. Okay. From council president's office, left there, and I joined the firm Legis Group, as you mentioned, as a partner. We are the only African American business law firm in the city of Philadelphia. Wow. And we, pride ourselves on helping small businesses and helping, others in our community and outside of our community, attain their business goals, whether it's your real estate business, whether it's your technology company, whether you sell, whether you're a grocery store. We want to help you out and make sure that you are protected legally. Okay. And so we run the gamut of representing businesses in whatever issue you're facing. My practice area specifically, I represent clients in zoning matters. So if clients need zoning variances for their development projects, or if you're renting a commercial space that you thought was a commercial space but found out is zoned residential, I can help you go through that variance process to legally use your space for what you want to use it as. I also represent clients during probate matters. So When someone passes away, you know, a lot of people in our community don't know how to legally transfer property over. So one thing I do is I help educate the community on the probate process and how to legally transfer assets, you know, into, you know, the heirs' names. I got into that, you know, I looked into that actually. I needed a job. My first summer out of law school, I had an internship in the Register of Wills in the city of Philadelphia. And that kind of just opened my eyes to, you know, this issue that we have in our community that, you know, people don't have wills, one, and two, they don't know how to transfer assets over properly. So that kind of, you know, jump started, you know, that path for me in working on, you know, probates and helping people with estate planning and things like that. Another portion of my practice area is transactional. So I help clients buy and sell real estate.
You do my job.
Yes. It's a funny story. One of my professors in law school, he's a real estate professor, and he always mentioned how he does not like realtors because he believes that they are practicing law without a license. And I'm like, they're licensed by the state to do something very, very specific that lawyers can do. You know, he always felt that they just took money away from lawyers, so that's why he
Well, I understand that because I feel the same way when a lawyer does my job. I'm like, why are you doing what I do? You know, focus on representing people in other areas. So let's do this.
It's a little bit more in depth. So like I actually, you know, negotiate the contracts, draft the contracts, you know, help clients obtain the financing as well.
So, sir, you're not going to come on my show.
Some competition.
Still in my business.
Some competition.
The difference between a real estate attorney and, you know, a real estate agent or a broker is that we aren't, you know, salespeople, right? So, you know, our clients, you know, come to us because they need help with something specific. Want us to take a look at something to make sure that they are protected legally.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, it's a little difference, little nuance in what we do. But realtors and real estate brokers are definitely needed in that field because they are the people who market the product.
Yeah, so if someone already has an end buyer or something like that, then that's when, you know, they may feel like, okay, Desiree, I don't need you to market the property and, you know, do what you do. I can just go to Jeffrey, and Jeffrey can draft the contract for me and that seller or the buyer, rather.
Yes. Yep. And I can,
or vice versa.
And add some special provisions depending on what my client wants to see. So I listen to my client. I take a look at what their goals are, and I just put their goals in writing and go from there. And we also represent some nonprofits. We help with the formation of nonprofits, and we also act as general counsel to some of the largest nonprofits in the city. I represent the largest provider of homeless services in the city. You know, my business partner represents probably many franchises in Center City. And so we run that gamut as far as your business and your real estate business goes as well. So we try to help people with and providing very boutique specific services that you know that they're looking for, the quality that they're looking for. We also do a little bit of government relations. I wouldn't call it not too much, but when folks have issues because of my background in government. I do have relationships with people in different sectors of government. So I try to bridge that gap between my clients and the government to help them, achieve whatever their goals are for their business or personally.
Okay. So, all right. Good.
And versatility.
Yes. A lot of versatility, but you want to stop stealing my business, though.
When folks need a realtor, you're the person that I'm going to push them to because just working with you, I understand your passion for the community. So
thank you.
I think we need more people that have that passion, that understand our community and wants to see our community thrive. So
absolutely, definitely. a goal of mine. You know, I want to see all of us thriving. So for sure. So from an attorney's perspective, what are some of the issues that you see affecting, you know, the Black community as well as the low and middle class community in the Philadelphia area or abroad?
Regarding the real estate, so one thing that I see is just the access to capital. I have a lot of small, clients who rehab properties. They're great at rehabbing properties, but they have reached a capacity, and they just need access to capital to continue to grow their business.
Okay.
And it's unfortunate, but as Black and brown business owners, they don't have that same luxury of capital. They don't have the luxury of drawing from a community of like-minded peers.
Absolutely.
Where they can, draw that support from, and those resources from. So that's, the biggest thing I see as far as on the development side of real estate.
Okay.
For homeowners themselves, I think actually it's the same thing for homeowners themselves. It's the preservation of their property. Philadelphia is a city where there are a number of poor homeowners.
Yes.
And those poor homeowners tend to be taken advantage of in situations where, when gentrification starts to occur in some of these neighborhoods. And so there needs to be, some more resources provided to, poor homeowners, to help them protect their properties. Like, one thing that, I think is a detriment is that for some of the legal aid organizations in Philadelphia, for example, if you own a home and you have a legal issue dealing with your home, they can't represent you, even if you meet the income requirements, because you own a home. It prevents them from representing you in whatever issues you're facing with that home. So I think that there just needs to be a little bit more resources provided, to those low income homeowners for housing preservation in their communities, and that's how folks can stay in their communities and benefit from the development that's happening in their communities because, they are able to preserve their own home.
Yes. We had last week City Council person Catherine Gilmore on, and she was talking about this amazing program that's going to be coming out. I know you're familiar with it. The whole home repair.
Yes.
Program where a person can get up to $50,000 to repair their home, which I think is awesome as long as they qualify. I think that's major. It's going to help a lot of people to be able to make, necessary repairs to their home and be able to stay in their home. There's a lot of people contact me because they just cannot afford the upkeep in their homes. Like you said, Philadelphia it's a city of older homes, and a lot of the senior population, for one, they don't like dealing with some certain contractors because people do take advantage of them. They can't, in a lot of situations, they are on a fixed income, so they don't qualify for loans and all of that. So, a program like this is good. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so first I'm going to give a shout out to Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Yes.
She was a colleague of mine. We were both city council staffers at the same time.
Nice.
And it just so happens that her family's church is next to my house. So, Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson, she's known, people in my family, my neighborhood for a very long time.
Yeah, she's an amazing person, I believe. Amazing. Yes.
Amazing. She does things the right way, I like to say.
Yes.
But regarding the preservation program, I believe the city just floated a $400 million bond for housing preservation. So it's something that is very necessary, and we need to provide more opportunities for those types of programs. And for me personally, not even just for homeowners, but even for some landlords, right? Because landlords are renting to low-income folks in low-income neighborhoods, and they need to keep their properties maintained as well in order to, keep some affordability. So if I'm a landlord and I need to rehab my property, but it's going to cost me, $150,000 at 12%, That's a little bit too much. But if a city could come up with a program where they can lend that same amount of money with, a lower interest rate and, with some kind of guarantee that the properties will be maintained affordable, I mean, I think that'd be a win-win for a lot of people.
Yeah, so Catherine, Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore, she did say that this program is available to landlords, which, did definitely get me excited about that because, everyone isn't a huge developer and you want to provide quality housing to people. And, it is expensive to maintain properties.
Yeah.
As long as you keep the rent affordable, then she said that, a landlord would also qualify or could also qualify for this program as well. So I think that's awesome.
That's great. One thing I forgot to mention is I also represent landlords and tenants in landlord-tenant court. So I get to see both sides of, what happens, during those, interactions and during those agreements. And yeah, I do see, where there are some slumlords, but I do also see where, sometimes that tenants take advantage of their landlords as well. So it's a slippery slope. It definitely happens. I've been in landlord-tenant court with a client now. It's going on. My client hasn't received rent since May of 2021. So we're fighting this battle from municipal court. Now we're in common pleas court, and it's just seems like it's an ongoing battle when folks have the resources to take advantage of some of the laws that the city has in place to protect tenants, which are needed. But I do think that things need to be level on both sides because all landlords aren't, slumlords. All landlords aren't, rich millionaires.
Absolutely.
Most landlords, it's just how they survive, and they just need that extra income to survive. So we need to really differentiate between those bigger, property owners and some of the smaller, businesses in the city.
Okay. Are there any initiatives right now to help with that, or
not from my understanding at the moment? I just think it's just the laws that are in place with the city. I think when they are implemented with good intention. But when you're being practical, you see that it hurts a lot of people who are just trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
And you just have to find that balance between, what the right thing is for all folks on all sides. And
I know a lot of landlords were affected by, obviously the whole COVID situation, and, they weren't able to evict tenants and all of those things. Not to say that they, should have been able to evict them, but, a lot of landlords were hit hard, and they just, feel like they don't want to do it anymore because they weren't able to collect their rent, but mortgages were still due. It put a lot of people, under a lot of strain.
Yeah, and I think that's what it comes back to, for our community and the access to capital for some of these smaller, landlords and developers. There is no cushion there that could help brace for that. And so because they don't have that access, it kind of hurt a lot of, smaller property owners. Yeah. Where I know, clients of mine have just sold off their portfolios in Philly just because of that. They just could not maintain it. And I think, as a city, we want to be able to grow some of those businesses, not put them out of business. So our policy should grow them.
Okay. All right, good. Are there any other issues that you see affecting our community when it relates to real estate? Yeah,
there's one thing. There's it's called Act 135. Essentially, it's called the Conservatorship Act, the Abandoned and Blighted Property Act, excuse me. So what this act does is if you are a property owner of any blighted or abandoned property, a neighbor or a nonprofit that is essentially supposed to be, whose mission is supposed to be blight remediation or development, can file a petition to possess your property, basically. And in theory, it sounds great because they file a petition to clean up the blight, and to get your property fixed up in a manner where it's no longer causing any issues to the community, right? Because there can be, with abandoned properties, of course, it could be vermin, or crime can take place in these abandoned properties. So it is a good idea in practice to, put these properties in the hands of someone that can rehab those properties. However, in the implementation of this act, it targets a lot of low-income areas, a lot of areas that are gentrifying, and it sucks away the equity from the property owners, because essentially, as soon as a person files a petition for conservatorship over a property, that property owner, and if the courts deem that the property is blighted, abandoned, etc., then that property owner is now liable to pay for all of the expenses of the person who filed the petition.
Yes.
And so let's just say if someone filed a conservatorship act on my property, I don't have the $30,000 it's going to take to get my property up to code, right? Because this property was gifted was grandma's house, right? And life happens, and in our communities, we tend not to have $30,000 just lying around to rehab the properties. On top of, again, the issue with accessing capital to do the rehab. And so what happens is these developers or nonprofit or whoever kind of preys on these communities to either, one, make them a deal to and lowball them to purchase the properties, or two, use the force of the courts to go through the entire process to become the conservator of this property. And what that means is now, if it costs $30,000 to just get the property up to code in a safe condition, well, now because I've been awarded possession of the property and I've been awarded, the conservatorship, I'm now going to put $200,000 in this property, and now you owe me, instead of $30,000, you owe me $200,000 of the money that I put out to rehab this property, plus all my legal costs, plus all my engineering costs, plus any other costs that are associated with the property. And so now, if you can't pay me this $200,000 plus, now I'm going to lien your property. And now, because I have this lien on your property, now I'm going to foreclose on your property. And now I'm going to sell your property. And anything...
It's a property grab.
Yeah, pretty much. And so now, because, this property was in the neighborhood, the values are, let's just say the values are $200,000, $210,000. Now, I get my $200,000 out, and you're only left with $10,000 now. For a property where if you had access to the capital to begin with, you could have done all of that and made, $200,000 yourself.
Absolutely.
So it's unfortunately that there aren't any resources in place when these types of things happen, because we really need to preserve the equity and preserve the wealth in some of these neighborhoods. And again, this is just a grab.
It is. And a lot of these homes, like you said, they may be passed down to, from it may be grandma's home, and, the family pretty much inherited it. So a lot of times it's a tangled title, right? So you have to deal with that issue and all of that before you can even try to get a loan to make repairs to the property. So it's an entire process. Yeah. So, and like you said, the $30,000 that it would cost to put into the property, now first of all, that property owner has to now get legal counsel, right? You have to get counsel. Yes. So now you have to pay a lawyer, right? You have to pay these legal fees, and you have all of these other expenses. And you and I talked about this on numerous occasions, but if the conservatorship is awarded, then you have to pay the person who filed the conservatorship, even if it isn't awarded, right? Right.
As long as the court deems the property to be abandoned and blighted, and even if the court orders what's called conditional relief, what that means is that the property owner can rehab the property themselves and fix the property up and get it to code themselves. Even if that happens, whatever costs that the petitioner has put out, you have to pay. Plus a percentage of what it costs for you to rehab the property yourself too. So it's a lose situation for property owners that have had this filed on their property, and it's just unfortunate that again there isn't a lot of resources out there to protect those property owners.
Okay. All right, guys. So again, we are here speaking to Mr. Jeffery Young. He's an attorney with Legis Group LLC, and this is Real Talk with the Real Estate Diva.
And one thing you mentioned, Desiree, is one aspect of the Act 135 when it comes to the property owners is tangled titles. That is a big issue in our community. When I worked for Council President Clark, I actually started this homeownership seminar where we brought out folks to the community in the 5th Council District to talk about all types of aspects that affect homeowners, from tangled titles to property taxes, to what PHDC programs or home repair programs. We just brought all these resources directly to the community, so they are equipped and understand how to protect themselves, how to protect their properties, and how to preserve their properties. Tangled title is a big deal because folks in our community don't know how to pass on property. People think that when grandmom dies, I'm the oldest, it just goes to me, or I'm the oldest, I get to take care of everything. And that's essentially not true. There are specific laws in this state that say who gets what if there isn't a will. And so when properties, when families are unaware of how to transfer property legally, it just creates a web of tangles, which is called why the phrase is tangled titles actually was coined here in Philadelphia. Other cities don't have that. I believe it was coined by Judy Berkman at Regional Housing Legal Services, and other cities. Most cities don't have this issue like we have. I know Baltimore has it because they have a similar population, but most other cities don't have this, issue as prevalent as we do here in Philly. So I always tell folks when someone passes away and they own property, you have to take the right steps to protect your property. I always tell folks if you own property and you have more than one child, even if you don't have more than one child, you should have a will.
Absolutely.
Have a will to say exactly what you want done with your property. And wills in Pennsylvania can be simple. You can take a napkin, you can write, "I want my property to go to Johnny," and sign it. In Pennsylvania, that is a legal will.
Wow.
There's extra steps that have to be taken during the probate process when someone goes to register wills. However, that is a legal will in the state of Pennsylvania.
So it doesn't have to be notarized or anything. It's just
not have to be notarized.
Piece of paper.
It can be a piece of paper.
Signed.
Pretty much, it's called a holographic will. Like it can be a piece of paper. This piece of paper I have in front of me, I can write what I want, who I want to give things to, sign it. You two are here as witnesses. You can sign as a witness. Doesn't have to be notarized. That's a will.
But it does have to be witnessed or no?
It does not have to be witnessed. But having a witness makes it creates less issues when you go to probate if you have witnesses available. But again, I don't need a witness. I can just write on a piece of paper who I want things to go to, sign it, and date it, and that's my will.
All right, guys. So pull out your napkin, your piece of paper, whatever it is, and write out your will. Because, I mean, as you stated, this is a major problem in our community. Yes. And, you mentioned a lot of people think that when mom or grandmom passes away, it goes to the oldest person, and the eldest person may just have someone draw up a deed, right? Take it down and have it recorded. Really, that doesn't mean anything. Yeah,
that is not a legal deed. Essentially, when someone passes, someone has to be named the executor or the administrator of their estate. And what that is I describe it as it's power of attorney after someone passes away. You have the authority to act on behalf of that person when they are deceased. And when someone is deceased, that's the only way you can act on their behalf is if you have letters of testamentary or letters of administration.
What's the difference?
Letters of testamentary are given when there is a will.
Okay.
And letters of administration are given where there isn't a will. So it's just the phrase right now, and other states are changing it from executor, which is the person who administers a will, versus administrator, which is someone who administers in the state without a will. Most states are just changing it to personal representative.
Okay. So that there's no confusion or less confusion.
Right. Because
okay.
they are the same thing. You have the same authority. It's just, one person died with a will, one person died without one.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But tangled titles is really important in order to access services as well. So if you're living in grandmama's house, but if they're back taxes or things are falling apart, you need some help. You have to get that property in your name in order to receive certain city services and things like that, in order to preserve your property. So it's very important that homeowners, have the deed to the property actually in their names. There are a lot of people that I know that call my office, lived in the house for 15 years, but their name isn't on that deed, and so we have to go through this convoluted process of probating an estate. When grandmom died in 1985, and then grandmom had 4 kids, but 2 of them are deceased, and they had children, so we have to go through this whole process,
finding the children.
Exactly.
Yes.
And another way, it actually prevents other family members from stealing the property as well. So one practice area is that I work on is estate litigation as well, where I have family members who are fighting over properties because one family member knew about the probate process, the others didn't, and so then they fraudulently sign paperwork so they can become the property owner all by themselves and not share that with their siblings. So we have to stay up and stay vigilant on what the process is to protect ourselves, because we think family won't do it, but I see it every day. Family does it.
Oh, I see it every day as well. Definitely see it. People will contact me to sell a property, and because this is something that happens in Philadelphia, I know to ask certain questions, and a lot of times, they don't have the proper paperwork, and they don't understand why we can't move forward, with selling the property. But we have to go through this process, and a lot of times there's inheritance taxes that they did not account for. So now I have to pay all this money. Well, yes, like you have to pay the inheritance taxes on the property. You inherited it, but a lot of people don't understand that. Like you said.
Inheritance tax is something that we all have to pay. We inherit property in Pennsylvania. If you are the spouse, you don't pay any inheritance tax. If you're the children, you pay about 4%. And then everyone else, pays about 15%. If you're the niece or nephew or cousin, you have to pay 15% of the estate value in inheritance taxes. So that is something that we need, more education on, because people just need to know what this process is. And one thing that our current Register of Wills, Tracy Gordon, has been doing is trying to go to communities and educate communities on what this process is, and how folks can navigate that process.
Yeah, she's excellent with that. I love the fact that she has so many workshops throughout the city to educate our community. And I remember when she was running, that was one of the platforms she was running on. Is to be able to educate the community about this process, because so many people do end up losing their homes because they don't know what to do.
Yep.
So they throw up their hands and say, "Forget it. I don't want to have anything to do with it." They're walking away from, their legacy, right?
Property always has value.
Absolutely.
Even if it's a vacant lot. I tell folks all the time, there is value there.
Do not just walk away from it.
Yeah. Don't ever walk away from property. There are ways that you can, offload property and get something for it, but to just walk away and abandon property, you're literally leaving money on the table.
Absolutely.
So I always suggest folks, if you have properties, you can get in contact with a realtor. They're gonna sell it.
Yes, we will. Yes, I will. Yes. One way or another, we're going to go ahead and get it sold.
Right.
But a lot of times, people also don't know that even if a property is sold at sheriff's sale, right? And maybe you could speak to this a little bit. If a property is sold at sheriff's sale, let's say the debt on the property is $50,000, but the property sold for $150,000, the homeowner, they can claim that additional money, right?
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah,
So
that's additional equity that's in your property. So if your property sells at a tax lien, say your tax bill was $10,000 and that's what the city, sold the property for, put the property up for sheriff's sale for. At sheriff's sale, it bids and sells for $90,000. Well, you are entitled to that excess $80,000. That is your money, and the sheriff holds that money, and we also represent clients in getting that money back.
how long does a person have to claim that money?
It's yours. It's yours to claim after a certain period of time.
20 years later, I can come back and...
Yes, after a certain period of time, the sheriff actually has to send that money to the state treasury department, and it becomes unclaimed funds. So you always have a right to that money. That is your money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's your money.
Okay, I didn't know that there was no time limit on claiming it.
That's your money because the city can't, or the state, they can't keep that money. That is not, it's not abandoned funds. Again, abandoned funds go to the treasury, and if you put the claim in and you have a right to that money, then the state treasury department releases that money.
Okay, good. So yes, people, please claim that money. I remember a situation several years ago where, I tried to tell a person, go down there, get the excess, get that money, and they just wouldn't do it, and I don't understand. Some people just think that the process is so, tedious or stressful, but this is money that's there for you.
Yeah, and I think that's where our community needs more. Lawyers actually.
Absolutely,
to be honest, we need more lawyers of color that look like us, that understand our perspective, that come from our communities, that know how to talk to us, and knows how to relay, complex issues in a way that they can understand. And I try to make my clients feel comfortable as possible with the process, and explain to them, like, listen, like this is something that needs to be done. You should feel comfortable with it. And things take time, but things can get done. Do not get discouraged.
Absolutely.
Because the systems want you to be discouraged so you don't move forward. And just maintain faith, and things will happen in the right manner. Like I have a couple clients now. I'm going through the probate process. Younger African American women. They were the heirs to their grandmom's estate. A lot of issues going on in the family, but just being able to communicate with them in a way they understood. She was just like, I'm glad my lawyer black. He get it. He understands.
He gets it, right?
I know what goes on. I know, family dynamics. So that's very, very important in providing, legal services to a community. You have to, empathize with them in order to provide, great, service.
Absolutely. Guys, this is Desiree, Real Estate Diva McDuffie. This is another episode of Real Talk with the Real Estate Diva, and I am here with Mr. Jeffery Young. He's an attorney with Legis Group LLC. So, Jeffery, really quickly, one of the things that, we spoke about briefly, and I have my views about wholesaling and, what that is and how that affects our community. But I do think that, in my opinion, that is another area where, a lot of people in our communities are losing equity in their homes. I think it's an equity grabs. It steals, money from our community. So I'm not a fan of wholesaling, and not just because people say, well, you don't like wholesaling because you're a real estate agent. Well, from my perspective, the way wholesaling works is the wholesaler has to convince the homeowner that their property is worth far less than it actually is. And then they sell the contract, the piece of paper, to an investor for what the property is truly worth. So as an example, they may convince the homeowner that the property is worth $50,000. but they actually know it's worth $100,000. So they sell that piece of paper to a contractor, an investor, and then that wholesaler walks away with $50,000. Some people get all excited about it and say, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do that." In my opinion, because in most situations, maybe not all, in most situations, you're deceiving the homeowner. What homeowner would be okay with giving? I met one wholesaler, and literally on a transaction, he made $100,000.
Yeah.
So you cannot tell me, you cannot convince me that homeowner was okay with giving away $100,000 of the value of her property. You can't tell me. And then, the argument is, well, you're going to have to pay a real estate agent. Well, in no situation is a real estate agent walking away with $100,000 on the sale of a property that's $200,000. In zero situation is that happening. So I know that there's some, you mentioned before that there's a new, law in place with regards to wholesalers and some of the things that they need to disclose, to the community that they're quote unquote servicing as well. So
I wholesaling, I have mixed reviews about wholesaling. I mean, it serves like with every industry, there's some pros and there are some cons. For some property owners, one of the pros is that it's quicker. Some folks need that cash quickly. They may be in certain desperate situations, or they just have other things they need to do with that cash. And wholesaling typically closes within 30 days, right?
A real estate agent can do the same thing and get you more money in most situations. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Depending on where the market is, though, depending on the property, the location, and how hot that market is, right? Because if I'm in an area where it's not, too much activity happening, that property can sit on the market for, 6-8 months. Whereas if I'm a wholesaler and I have one of the benefits of wholesalers, they have direct connections typically to the end developer or the end user of the property. So it's a quicker process in that way. There are some cons, again, like it can take some of the equity out of the property owners, the seller's hands. Again, like, I haven't seen, too many deals where a wholesaler made $100,000, but I think that is definitely, too much money, to be taken away from a seller. I do advise everyone, if someone approaches you to purchase your property, I do advise you to speak with a real estate agent, a real estate broker, an attorney, to make sure that it's in your benefit. At the end of the day, you may end up wanting to sell to that person at that price, but you want to be well informed about that transaction.
Absolutely.
I got into wholesaling again. Not me personally, but I represent wholesalers because of the tango title issues as well. So wholesalers know their grandma's property has been vacant for 20 years. No one's taking care of it. And the wholesaler said, I know someone who wants to rehab this. That person doesn't have connections to the community. So let me basically middleman that deal. And as wholesaling real estate goes, I mean, there's wholesaling in every industry almost. So I just think that it's because it's real estate, it has more of a personal effect on the quality of life and the wealth of individuals. I think it's just a little bit more scrutiny. It just needs to be paid.
So I gave my perspective on wholesaling, but from a legal standpoint, what exactly is wholesaling?
So wholesaling in the real estate arena is when an individual gets a property under contract to purchase that property from the property owner, and then they assign that contract or sell that contract to someone else at a higher rate than what they have essentially purchased that contract for. So for example, if I go to you and I say, hey, I want to buy your house for $50,000, and then you agree, you sign that contract, and then I, in turn, sell that contract or assign that contract over to someone else for $65,000. Ultimately, in the end, I made $15,000 from that contract without having to put
Any
much
money
money down, depending on your contract with the property owner. And that is how a lot of folks get into real estate. It's like the entry level to real estate. If you are not a real estate agent, no wholesaler or not, you cannot wholesale a deal and be a real estate agent on that same deal. There are some conflicts involved with that. But
that's true. But unfortunately, there are some real estate agents that do participate in wholesaling. What they shouldn't, but they do.
Yeah, they shouldn't. There's a lot of conflicts involved in that. Like a lot of wholesalers who I represent, I've always asked them, why not just be an agent? And to be honest, because they can make more money being a wholesaler if they are good at wholesaling.
They can make more money stealing money from other people. I'm sorry. That's just my opinion on the matter.
That's a perspective.
Because you wouldn't want that to happen to your grandma, right?
Not at all. And that's why I advise everyone who owns property, who is looking to sell, to hire a professional. Hire a real estate agent, a broker, a lawyer, someone to represent you in that transaction. I know it may cost you some money, but at the end of the day, it can save you money as well. So you don't want to be taken advantage of, and that's why we should hire a professional.
Yeah, I've had several situations where people tell me, "Oh, Desiree, you're going to, piss a lot of people off." But it is what it is. I am an advocate for my community, period. Even as a real estate agent, I'm an advocate for my community. And I've had several situations where people had contacted me and they had gotten into these wholesale contracts. And, I was able in every situation to get that homeowner much more money than they would have been walking away with had they moved forward with this wholesale contract. Because at the end of the day, the wholesaler knows, again, as an example, if they're looking to buy the property for $50,000, they know it's worth $65,000, and they're going to find a buyer for $65,000, and they know that they're going to walk away with that difference. And I can't talk about commission structures and all of that, but almost in zero situations is a real estate agent going to walk away with $15,000 and selling a $65,000 property. So, I had my feelings about real estate agents wholesaling. It happens, but I think that, and I don't believe this is the case, but if a person is wholesaling a property, that should have to be disclosed to the homeowner, and it is not in most situations. The homeowner has no idea what's going on until they get to the table and they see this big old check go, and a lot of times it has to be a double closing, right? So that's another way that they can hide it from the homeowner, because they have to do this double closing. So the homeowner closes on the property, sometimes with the wholesaler, and then the wholesaler then closes, with their end buyer, and the homeowner never knows that this person actually walked away with all of this money.
Right. And the city of Philadelphia has actually put in certain laws to kind of protect property owners, from the wholesaling industry. Wholesalers in Philly are required to have a wholesaling license.
Good.
And if you do not have a wholesaling license, and you wholesale a property, that property owner can pretty much void the agreement of sale up until closing. And so there's no recourse for that wholesaler if they do not have this wholesaling license. Now, again, they may not have to disclose to the homeowner that, they're wholesaling it, but as long as they have their license, they are able to wholesale. But one thing property owners should look out for in these agreements, again, is why I said, hire a real estate agent, an attorney, a broker, is an assignment clause in the contract. Yes. If they can assign the contract to someone else, that's not their own separate entity that they own or are a part of, then that's a flag to me that this contract is going to be wholesaled and going to be flipped. So you want to make sure that, you're reading these contracts or have someone read the contracts for you, and that you understand what you're signing, because they are legal documents. And regarding wholesaling, a lot of a lot of people don't know, a lot of wholesalers, this is for you wholesalers, don't know, is that when you assign your contract, that is also a transfer of the property, which can be subject to the real estate transfer tax as well. So, if the State Department of Revenue gets a hold of the information that the property was assigned over, then that assignment is essentially a transfer of the property, and that can be taxed for real estate tax purposes.
Okay.
Real estate transfer tax purposes.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of wholesalers have, worked to find the loophole, in that way.
Yeah, me as an attorney, I mean, I draft contracts up for, if I know someone's going to a wholesaler to flip it, I'd put language in there where they create entirely new contracts to, to avoid certain.
He's a good attorney, but in that situation, I think he's working for the enemy.
I help people with their legal issues.
Absolutely, as you should.
So there are things where if I believe that things are immoral, I definitely won't help someone. But in certain situations, there are times where wholesaling is a benefit, again, because it can be a quick sell. The end user, has cash, right? So cash is king in America.
Most good real estate agents have end users that are, developers and can pay cash and all of that. But like you said, the benefit is that a lot of times these developers like to use a wholesaler because even in that situation, they know they're getting a steal for the property.
Yeah, it happens, and
everyone wins, but the owner.
And in some cases, I mean, I've represented, families, that were selling their properties to wholesalers. I mean, because there was a tangled title issue, and the wholesaler, takes care of all of that for them. So that's a one less burden that they have to worry about, and so it has some pros and cons. Again, it just needs to be a little bit more regulated. I think people need to be educated on the value of their properties, and I think that will eliminate some of the negativity around wholesalers if people truly knew the value of their properties. I mean, one place to start is the City of Philadelphia's tax assessment system. So whatever your property is assessed at for tax purposes, that can give you a good frame of reference on where to start. If someone calls and asks you, can we buy your house for XYZ? Just see what your property is assessed at. If they try to offer you something lower than that, I mean, then that something potentially can be off. So just keep that in mind, and always call a professional, a real estate professional, for help.
Absolutely. And because sometimes, though, in certain neighborhoods, the assessment can be lower than what we would sell the property for. So a lot of wholesalers use that assessment to their benefit in that situation, because they'll say, oh, see, look, the city only assessed your property at X amount of dollars, but it's really in a gentrifying neighborhood where the values are increasing, and they could truly sell the property for more. So like you said, always seek out the assistance of a professional, a reputable professional, real estate agent or attorney, for assistance. Even if you just have questions, sometimes it's okay to, just call and ask basic questions. No one's going to necessarily work for free, but, to ask some general questions. One of the other things is we only have a few more minutes is, there's this whole epidemic now with stealing properties as well. Deeds. People are stealing properties by fraudulent deeds. So is there what would a person do? What are the steps a person could take if they feel as though their property was, was stolen, pretty much?
So one thing, it is very easy to steal someone's property here in Pennsylvania, and in Philly in particular. The state law says that if it looks like a deed, you got to record it. That's basically what the state law says. When I worked in city council, a former council member, Councilman Greenlee, tried to, pass legislation to prevent certain things from happening, certain deeds from being recorded. But here in Pennsylvania, we have something called preemption. So what that means is if the state laws trump the city laws, basically. So if the state say you can't do it, you can't do it. So we weren't able to provide too many protections. But now if a deed is recorded on your property, the city does send you a letter stating that something was recorded on your property. They send you a letter to your last known address that the city has on record. So it's important to update if you're a property owner and you don't live in that property, let's just say. It's important to update the city on where your correct mailing address is so you can stay up and stay vigilant on that. Regarding the actual deeds itself, again, like I said, if it looks like a deed, the city, they have to accept it as being recorded. But if the recorder's office is a public office, anyone can go in and take a look at the last deed that has been recorded on their property. And so if you are the victim of, deed theft, you can call the district attorney's office. They do have an economic crimes unit that they have, been more focused on lately. And they have started to prosecute a lot of people for some of these deed thefts. It's no longer just a civil, quiet title, and then we go about our way. The district attorney has been, taking steps to prosecute people who have been, stealing wealth and equity from
Absolutely.
folks.
Absolutely. Well, Jeffrey, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing this information. One of the things that you mentioned is when you were with Councilman Clark's office, you guys did these workshops. That's something I'm really passionate about. I spoke with my pastor about it before. Is that something you would assist with in
Absolutely.
the future?
I still do some of those workshops for other organizations throughout the different communities all over the city.
Okay.
I'm actually going to one in East Oak Lane, I want to say next week. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. So we'll talk offline about, making that happen. So if a person would like to hire you, for your services, how would they get in contact with you?
You can get in contact with me via email. My email address is jyoung@legisgroup.law. I can also be reached via telephone. You can call my cell directly, 484-273-8785. Or please visit our website, legisgroup.law. And again, you can learn all about our firm, our practice areas, and how we can serve you.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you. This has been another episode of Real Talk with a Real Estate Diva. This is Desiree Real Estate Diva McDuffie. I can be reached at my office, which is 267-238-2877, or you can send an email to dmcduffie, MCDUFFIE, at cbpref.com, or go to my website, which is phillyrealestatediva.com. Thank you guys. Thank you for tuning in. And until next week, be blessed.